These are Americans?
No, you're very hard pressed to find even a white American to say, "Well, the Japanese were in internment camps and they're not sad about it." But people will be,
Okay. I couldn't
yeah,
conceptualize
people will
what
be
they
like,
were
"Well,
saying.
why are you still talking about slavery?" Or, well, you should understand this because your people were slaves. They
Hmm.
don't ever touch the Holocaust like that.
Hmm.
So this is the shit that I'm saying. Like,
Hmm.
people are too comfortable playing with Black trauma, and like I said, maybe it's just Black people's general fatigue and the desire to exist as anything other than Black, which unfortunately in this country is not going to happen. In the world, you can certainly be something other than Black. In this country, no. So, like I said, that's just very strange to me that people are always so comfortable reaching for our oppression and stuff. And like I said, perhaps Black people being tired is why we're not checking that more often and more feverishly. But I start to get very worried when even those amongst us be like, "Oh, some racism a little here and there is okay," because it's not. It's really not. It's
And you're
not.
not saying hello, hello, good people from around the world, and welcome back to the Expression of Love podcast. It is your host, Soul Expression, and I actually wrote a nice little lengthy intro here, which, well, you'll see why it's necessary, and hopefully you can bear it. So I'm going to read it to you. Today is a special day, as you will see, for a couple reasons. One is that in today's episode, I am speaking with one of my best friends, whom I consider my sister, although we aren't related in truth. Her name is Keisha. She goes by the editor. She has done so many great things, it would take a very long time to list them all, but just take my word for it, she has seen many things and been many places. The other reason it is a special day is that I am introducing a new format to my show. In today's episode, you will see that I have interjected voiceovers in multiple places, and I am going to attempt to explain why I have done so now, so please bear with me for just a moment. After recording this episode, I found myself extremely emotional. Not sad or angry or a singular emotion, but emotionally intense on the inside. And this was because it was the first time that I have ever felt like I strongly disagreed with Keisha, and that she might strongly disagree with me if I had shared my views more during the recording. In reflecting on these disagreements and what to do with them during the editing process of this project, I was struck with the inspiration to do something that I see other podcasters do on their shows, which is to insert their opinions with a screenshot and a voiceover at various moments throughout the video. Now, with that inspiration, I immediately thought of how it may be taken as an unfair way to argue with a guest who is no longer there to defend their position or clarify what they meant. And this led me to the decision to try my best to not be argumentative and to just share what I was feeling, or in some cases, what I have done since recording this episode to look into the information that I was hearing. The first thing I want to say about this is that I am by no means trying to make this person whom I love look bad. I am also aware that some of my opposing views could have and maybe should have been shared during the original recording. But as I already pointed out, because of my reverence for this person, I just didn't find it in me to do anything but try to keep my facial expressions neutral as I could and make for good, interesting conversation while providing a space to have her ideas shared with me and my audience. With that being said, I did not write my responses, so some of them came out less polished than I would have wanted them to be. but I felt that it was more authentic to freely speak during this editing process on these voiceovers to be more genuine. Now, without further ado, please enjoy this episode and leave a comment, like, and subscribe if you have not had the chance already. And as always, I'll see you in the next one. Check it out. 2, 1. Hello and welcome back, everyone out there in the world, to the Expression of Love podcast. Man, oh man, today is a special day. Y'all have no idea, but I'm not gonna gas it up too much. I have a habit of doing that, and I want to dial that down a little bit so that y'all can just be amazed as we take this journey together. I am so happy and pleased to be speaking with Miss Keisha Mitchell. What's happening, sis? What's going on?
Hey, brother, how are you?
Man, blessed, highly favored, excellent, all those things. Glad to be talking to you again. Y'all, me and Keisha, we used to talk for 6 hours, y'all. We used to go in the crib, on the phone, like we used to go in like on so many things. And I've learned a lot from this woman, and she's always been a positive influence on my mind and my self-talk and all of these things. Hopefully I've been the same for you as well.
100%.
And we again, usually I don't have a specific topic, but today I have a very loose one. We'll call it a theme. And Keisha wanted to talk about accountability. She said, well, let me read exactly what she put, because she got this mind. Y'all are going to discover as we go through this thing. Keisha has this mind that is just so juicy. It's just so full of character. This is how she framed, like, I want to kind of explore accountability or hear that on your show. She said, a really raw, non-inspiring truth and practical honest discourse about self-accountability, awareness, and acceptance, but also the truth around tangible things it takes to come to the other side or a new stage of a person's experience. And as you can see, all of that, what it means in general, to me at least, what it means to me in general is that life is not necessarily set up to just be understood, right? Life, you come here, and for a lot of your young, like adolescence and even young adulthood, there's this narrative, at least in the Western world, and I believe in the whole world, there's this narrative that we're introduced to that says you should know who you are, you should define who you are, you should like have a 5-year plan in 10th grade, and just know, just decide right now exactly who you are. And how that sort of takes away from one's ability to just discover who they are is is a little dangerous for civilization as a whole and society, because it allows a person to remove some aspects of personal accountability, meaning we don't feel responsible for the well-being of human beings as a whole, because we're defining who I am, and this is the life that I'm leading, and you lead yours and leave me alone, is kind of some of the attitude that's a result of this thinking. And with that, we can't have an objective conversation about what you should be accountable for, the mistakes, whatever, and you could be forgiven, but it's about just being, again, accountable. So first, I kind of want you to introduce yourself, and then like what's your overall view on maybe why it's important to talk about accountability after you've introduced yourself.
Yeah, for sure. My name is Keisha Mitchell, sister of Mingo, friend to many, or I try to be anyway. And that's really just like the general global citizen. Yeah, a person of the earth. That's where I'm at with it. I think accountability is something that's sorely missing, but it's a byproduct and a piece of the puzzle of, you know, systems and spiritual systems and mental systems that are far decayed in this world. You know, accountability is a byproduct of honesty. It's a byproduct of integrity. It's a byproduct of community. It's a byproduct of, you know, so many things in terms of the infrastructure and inner workings of interpersonal relationships. And so people are isolated, you know, people are given tools to further their isolation, people hide. And then the unfortunate thing, which everything is a double-edged sword, and I work in tech. And so the wonderful thing about tech is that, you know, while it's certainly a channel of connectivity and communication, it's also, you know, a very strong, pliable, you know, material for building an echo chamber, you know. And so when it comes to accountability as well, if you're already isolated, if you're already lacking in this modern world, a lot of those systems that are necessary for human development and human sustenance, not even just growth, but just being able to stay, not just like, you know, emotionally rooted on the planet, but actually like rooted, like actually, you know, be able to stay here in the mortal coil. You know, it's easy to look like, oh, I'm such a deep person, or oh, I'm so committed to learning, but you know, only things that you want in your time on your watch. You know what I
Right.
mean? It's not real. And then you're only being affirmed by voices and more than likely people that look like you or look like you want to look. So who's really, you know, holding up a true reflection of who you are? Um, and then we have an issue, especially in the Western world, which I talk about this all day. I literally just got off the phone talking to my mama about it. Like in every, especially in the tech space, I just notice how people struggle with integrity. I notice how people struggle with, you know, making their actions match their literal words. I notice how people really don't have a working definition of what lies are anymore. And that's
Right.
such a, you know, rapid change in just 25 years. You know, I'm 34. I'll be 34, God willing, this year. And so, you know, I just literally had to ask my mother, like, okay, but weren't you told not to lie? Like, isn't that something somebody taught you? Because that's something that you taught me. And so I'm just kind of confused now how it's personal truth or it's perception. You know what I mean? And it's like, yeah, but there are absolutes. There are. And there are things that are very certainly close to absolute. There are.
Right.
We suffer and we struggle because we want to continue to deny and resist the inevitable because our echo chambers and the tools that we've been given help us to evade accountability in a way that we think that there's not any necessary.
Okay, y'all. So keep in mind this point about there are some there are some absolutes, because, and this is absolutely in no type way is this some sort of slight towards my sister or her immense intelligence or anything like that. We're all learning, and we're all learning so much so fast compared to any other time in history. But this being in the beginning of our conversation is very important, because later there are things that we talk about that seem to fit into the category of absolute for 99 or 97 and up percentage of the population of the world. Really 99, but there are conflicting data points, whatever, doesn't matter. There are things that we talk about later in this conversation that to me seem absolute or very close to absolute and common sense, but my sister doesn't necessarily think that way. And I didn't spend this conversation challenging her on her views or anything like that, because I like to use this platform to give voice to all types of perspectives, and I share, I share a lot of my own views in the Soul Speaks series. But the interview conversations are not all about like debates and stuff like that. So anyway, I just wanted to highlight this point about there are some things that are absolute, because it's relevant to some things that we talk about later, and some of like my facial expressions when we get into some of those things later. Sorry for the interruption. Back to your regularly scheduled programming. Check it out.
Any necessary necessary. And so when we're brought into these real relationships, into these real situations, whether they be with your children, your spouse, your friend, your partner, business or otherwise,
or the internet.
right, even on the internet, somebody checking you about something you said, people's first reaction, instead of seeking to understand and being, not even humbled just for the act of being humbled. But this is the thing, Mingo. I feel like people want to be right. There's so many people in this world that want to be right. There's so many people in this world that are afraid of looking stupid. They're afraid of looking dumb. But as ironic as it is with human nature, you would think that the desire for being wrong would lead to the awareness of and the activity of closing that gap of knowledge as soon as possible, right? So if I don't know something and I'm worried about what me operating in the world without knowing that thing is, somebody come along and get me right immediately so that I can close the gap of knowledge I don't have, so I can be aligned with the right. Please don't have me out here walking around in a circle with the wrong. But so many people want their egos stroked and would rather be left walking around in a circle with the wrong information just to say nobody can tell me nothing, or so they can hide from that, that correction, for whatever reason, whatever correction represents to them, so they can hide from it, and continue to operate in that space. And that's really what we're working with on every single level. It's pervasive in every single thing, every single generation. I feel like is seeming to suffer from it. Of course, I notice it more, millennials, and then the boomer generation. But Gen Z certainly has their issues with it. I just don't talk to a lot of Gen Z people as much. Like every day, it feels like my age group gets older and older, and so there's also just like it's also now also the thing of kind of like being in that mid stage, right, where I'm not an elder yet, but I'm definitely an adult. And so seeing new people go into adulthood and kind of like not realize that there are things that they don't know, and they don't know that they don't know them, and nobody can tell them anything because it's just for them to find out when they find out, is like, that's a thing. But then also seeing how these things about honesty and lack of communication and lack of accountability is playing into the deprecation of people's connectivity across all age spans.
Yes, yes, absolutely. And you raised such a beautiful point about like the how the good and bad of internet. I don't know if it's internet activism, like it's always activism, but some sort of internet like calling to be on a certain side of the fence. You feel what I'm saying? Like issue issue in the middle, objective issue, exactly what's going on, what the results are, and then this need to express I'm on this side of the fence and everybody on the other side of the fence is wrong, and vice versa. Where we don't seem to realize that the objectivity of improving the result of said issue that's in the middle, that doesn't care about your feelings, is what both sides want, right? But there's this almost primal, almost animalistic, or maybe like early human, you could say, need to belong to the in group, need to belong to the correct.
And not even just the in group, but need to belong to and this is where the danger is, you need to belong to the group that affirms your particular worldview and makes you feel comfortable like you're right. It's not a lot of people that say, oh, wow, I had never thought about that like that before. Maybe that's something that I do need to like think about. Maybe I do need to marinate with that. Maybe I did not have the right answer. Or maybe two things can be true at the same time.
Yeah. Yeah. And some of the which I definitely want to ask you about, some of the real world, I could say, at least on the West, the Western, Europe and America and Canada and whatnot, problems that are arising is the um, left or even like feminist kind of correlational graph going up with fatherless homes, and then the actual results that are happening in terms of some of the things that just are a result that we can look at, and then we can use the results to re-examine what's happening. And I'm gonna read some stats for you in just a second, but my basic point is there's a correlation between the rise of the rhetoric of super independence and super I don't need a man culture that is going up at the same rate as a lot of problems in society. Here are some statistics to sort of illustrate what I'm trying to say, which I'm not doing a very successful job of. 90% of American inmates are men, 75% of which grow up in fatherless homes. 63, and this is not a blame on women, but I'm gonna try to tie it in a bow after I'm done with the stats. 75% of those men grew up in fatherless homes. 63% of youth suicides committed by fatherless youth. So you're 5 times more likely to kill yourself at some point or attempt to if you grow up without a father figure. 90% of all homeless runaway children, fatherless homes. 85% of children with behavioral disorders, fatherless homes. So you're 20% more likely to develop a behavioral disorder at some point without a father figure. 80% of all rapists whatsoever, male or female, fatherless homes. 71% of high school dropouts, same thing. And these stats sort of paint a picture of, okay, so some of the rhetoric is, well, the independence was so necessary, and it's really what's supposed to happen is we're all in this age of technology, and so we don't need what we used to need, which is the nuclear family. But in most civilizations that have seen any type of progress towards peace, you see the nuclear family or some sort of variant of that. And maybe polygamous, because there's a lot of good arguments in favor of polygamy. Not so much today's polyamory, but polygamy itself, where the providing and stuff was the masculine role, and the nurturing and stuff was the feminine roles, whatnot. But there's this sort of correlation that I would love to see, like, get your thoughts on, because I think it ties directly into accountability, where when there's a space to bring up this correlation and say, maybe if the sexual liberation and the super independence movements were re-examined, and we take a look at, okay, well, what's our collective goal? There may be individual goals, and hopefully they harmonize with collective goals. If the collective goal is a peaceful civilization coexistence, where we're cooling and we're progressing and we're still doing the human thing, but with less destruction, then is that what really, if that super independence rhetoric is leading to this outcome, then is it, like, really necessary? Because I find a lot of backlash to those that make the argument for or in favor of dialing down some of that rhetoric and going more towards a nuclear family. And I'm curious as to what you think about that.
Yeah, so I have a lot of different thoughts. The first thought that I have to ask is, like, where are those statistics from? Because how many fatherless homes are there, period? It's easy to take a situation and say a percentage of this thing, but the greater context is how many of that things exist. To your point about independence in polygamy, or independence in the family structure, in the decay of the family structure because of hyper independence of women. But when you talk about variants of the nuclear family, which I don't know if that's necessarily a true statement. I don't know if the most peaceful societies have a variation of the nuclear family, as that's a very 1950s Western idea. It may be perhaps more common in Christian and especially Christo nationalist nations, that because of that, religious framework, you have found more heterosexual male, female, or two-partnered families, but we know that that's not true to the ancient way of things. And if the ancients were able to get us and procreate and keep societies going until we got here, obviously the Western way before this way wasn't the only way or the only successful way. The third thing that I would say is the polyamory and polygamy is that you say that a lot of the provision is done by the women, but even as I look across today at the United States, at the Mormon households, and certainly in the Black polygamous households that I'm aware of, the women are certainly not only now doing the lion's share of the work, which is also a part of the problem. That's a part of the problem with behaviors in children, is that I think, less to your point about a father figure being in the home, just father present, masculine presence in general. So there's not a balance of emotional development. But even that's weird, because emotions are not binary. So it's not like men exclusively provide one thing where women don't. But there are, in a physical capacity, I think it is important for, even just down to having a penis, it's important for a boy to be taught by a man how to pee. You know what I mean? Stuff like that. But beyond that, I don't think it's like super, super necessary that the male archetype, because I would imagine that male archetype to you might still kind of look like a cis male, or, like, you know what I mean, a male that's more in the masculine framework of male. And
Yes.
I don't think that that's um the only way that masculinity is helpful in our contribution. But back to the point about polygamy, it would seem to me that if there are polygamous communities across the world and two-parent communities across the world, and the two-parent communities are still struggling, or one woman who becomes a single mother starts to struggle when the man is gone, but in the successful communities, it's more women and still one man. It seemed like the answer is more women, not men, to me, based off of that example. It would seem like in a polygamous household, if more women are there and they're really responsible for the rearing of children, which is really what we're talking about when we're talking about behavior and who they become as citizens in the world, seems like you're saying actually the answer would be more women based off of that example. So I feel
What
like,
do you mean? I'm sorry.
yeah, when you said polygamy and polyamory, that the man does the lion's share, or is doing the provision, and that the women, that those are more successful communities towards peace. It's not because of the men's provision. It would seem like because there's more women in the household, give it even more nurture, not less.
So like right here, right? There's already a bit of a what I said was more suggested, in my opinion. I mean, you can rewind it back and see and let me know in the comments. But what I tried to say is that the result that we can see is that when the father is not an active participant or there as a masculine presence or whatever, like when the home is a fatherless home, we get these negative results. Former President Barack Obama also backed some of what I said himself, and there are plenty of studies of the effects of fatherlessness that are easy to find out there. But either way, I was saying that when the nuclear family, which also the claim that it's just a 1950s thing and it's not the ancient way to be, I'll leave that to you all to confirm or deny in the comment section. I don't necessarily. I haven't been exposed to history that suggests that at all. There's definitely a lot of examples of mother, father, children, and cousins and whatnot. Nuclear family before before the 1900s. It just yeah. I'm not familiar with where that's coming from. That is a 1950s thing or whatever. But either way, I didn't suggest that we just need more women, indirectly or directly, in what I said. But yeah, I laid out results that we are seeing, and if we assume the statistics are not made up and just completely inaccurate, um, then I don't know how we got here where I suggested that we actually need more women. Just and more things like this come up during the conversation. I don't know, man. Please leave a comment. Keisha, if you watch this, leave a comment. Let me know. I love you. I'm not trying to create gotcha media at all. So much went by so fast during our interview that I didn't know how to formulate the questions and keep in mind the things that I'm supposed to be doing as a host of the podcast. And it's not an argument show, so I didn't want to just spend a whole lot of time on single topics and things. I wanted to hear what you had to say about a bunch of different things and expose your thoughts to my audience, because I like how your mind operates, and talking with you is always a unique experience. So thank you again for coming through the show. I hope you don't take any of these stop segments personally. Back to your regularly scheduled program, and again, I'm out.
Less. So the idea that it's somehow imbalanced when there's actually still, even in the same breath, an argument for an even greater imbalance, which would require, even though it would appear not to be, an even greater emotional load on women. You know what I mean? Because of the shared nature of raising those children. Um, It's like just hearing you say out loud, that's actually what that points to, as opposed to like men are, super important. Now that I've said all of that, just to like counter those points, I don't think that men are unimportant in any capacity. I think that if we're having a conversation about accountability, men would have to act. Well, and I'm gonna just be frank, and when I say this, and this is like not an attack against you, or anybody else, but it is very often my experience and my observation that the only men that even start to lean into this type of rhetoric or start to identify it are men who feel disenfranchised by society somehow, or feel like something is being taken from them in terms of what they were told their role is supposed to be. Meaning that whereas women are kind of like consistently adapting, I find, and like willing to be whatever the space needs in terms of society. If there need to be more workers, you're gonna find women that, ready to go do some work, whether it's physical labor or not. If the society needs more nurturers, you seem to find women that are ready to nurture. Women don't seem to have the attachment to what they're supposed to do. And now certainly we have our conditioning. That's not what I'm saying. But in terms of how we perform and what we contribute to society, women don't seem, especially Black women, don't seem to have this linear attachment to what they can solely provide in the way that I noticed that Black men do. And I noticed that this is where a lot of those ideologies start to kind of pop up from, especially, when we're talking about the manosphere and incels and a lot of this like really hateful rhetoric that's radicalizing so many men, it doesn't matter their age. It's very interesting to see how, here you have a white supremacist, here you have, a person that claims himself to be a Pan-Africanist or Afrocentric, you know what I mean? Here you have, a Latinx man from another community that don't got, really no skin in the game to any one of these conversations, but there's all some kind of like rallying around of women are taking this from us or people are taking it from us. And then it's very interesting to see how white supremacist replacement theory kind of conflates with this disenfranchisement that men are feeling, and how, you don't have to be white to be a white supremacist, right? Or how
Yeah, like, and that, right? You don't have to be white to be a white supremacist. You don't have to be white to think that white people are superior, but I don't know, man. I would definitely think you only find white supremacists, because who would want to create a world of white supremacy who would not benefit from that world? It just, I don't know, it doesn't make sense to me personally.
right? Or how you don't have to be white to become a nationalist, because they are oftentimes harping on this very singular, very underdeveloped thought about who men are and what men can offer. So I think that the accountability comes in for men, first of all, being willing to imagine a new narrative for themselves, like completely new, like so much to the point that if it looks or sounds like anything that you've ever heard before, you need to think about it again, because it's still being influenced by some shit that's already here. And everything that's already here, as we've discussed, is like stale, it's musty, it's decaying, it's not bearing fruit. And there is such a need and such a force. I mean, truly, I see our ancestors' hands on us with the way that things are going anyway. When you look at the original idea of God, it's anthropomorphic and it's female. If there's any gender about it, it's female. You know what I mean? But oftentimes they're anthropomorphic. And if you look at the Hebraic Bible, there are over like 100 gender assignments in the Hebraic Bible. You know what I mean? In the Torah. If you look in Islam, there are more than 2 gender assignments. And so a lot of the onus comes.
This, I have not been able to find online since recording this podcast. And I have looked very diligently to try to find, especially the 100 in the Hebraic Bible or the Hebrew Bible. I haven't found anything at all. Please leave a link in the comments that I can, copy and paste into the URL, so I can, I'm curious about this. This is not an argument against it. I haven't been able to find that there's more than 2 genders in Islam, and I haven't been able to find that there's 100 gender assignments in the original Bible text, in the Hebrew Bible. I haven't found it, and I haven't found any Hebrew Bible scholars that say anything like that either, like on YouTube. But in terms of reading, I haven't found anything that suggests that these kind of very strong claims are what's in those books. Again, please leave a link in the comments so I can look into it myself. I don't have the education. And well, I had never heard that up to this point. So again, in terms of my response, I didn't want to just be arguing, and I don't have any intention of doing that here. But stuff like this kept kind of just flying by, and I was a little bewildered. I was a little like, I don't even know how to respond to that, because it's so new. I've never heard anything like that, and I've been looking into and interested in the Bible and these things, and transgenderism and things for quite a long time. Well, in terms of transgenderism, only about a year and a half, 2 years, when it started seeping more and more into schools and into like Disney, and all of that. But the Bible I've been interested in for over 5-6 years, and I've never ever once, people that are really passionate about the Hebrew Bible in specifically or whatever, I've never heard any of that. The most I've heard is that if you look into the Hebraic Torah, or the Hebrew First Testament, that there might have been between like 5 and 7 or something like that, gender assignments. But 100 is a very strong claim. And then the information about the more than two at all is also has also seemed, in my unfinished research, to be very hard to confirm whether or not that's what it actually meant, and this is what it actually was declaring about the human race. So that's, I'm telling you, this conversation was I'm so appreciative of it, because it's helping me discover along the way, like, what a deep dive into what I don't know, and what I'm interested in, as well as like what I think, myself. Again, no offense intended, no gotcha media intended. Let's get back to it.
And so a lot of the onus comes on to patriarchy, misogyny, as those things fit into the ism of supremacy. And because men, and it is a problem where we do have, because of just the emotional underdevelopment of men, it's easy to like pin these things on like economics and other things. And really what it is that the same people who created the system are oppressing y'all too. It's just like white people, like white supremacy eats itself up, because white supremacy cannot live without people to oppress. It's literally not autonomous. You know what I mean? And in the same way that patriarchy is not. It's not true or natural for men to be the sole providers. It's not true or honest that in ancient societies, men were the hunter-gatherers all the time. Sometimes there were women do that. We see that in the lion, in the animal kingdom. It's the women that go out and get the food. The man is sitting and chilling. Actually, amongst most of the animal kingdom, men are the prettier ones. They are, the males of the species are the more relaxed ones. And so it's even ironic knowing that in prehistory, we got a lot of how to be human from the animals, right? Because they were here on the earth longer. They taught us how to collect. They taught us what to eat, what we couldn't eat. It would be silly to think that we didn't get our social structures from them. It's very interesting to think, in being the social creatures that we are, looking at the numerical propensity of women, that's always been the case. There's always been more women than men. I understand how in a modern world, with a lot of the way that things have been topsy-turvy, how men are made to feel, and why, again, a lot of these like really conservative, like right-wing ideologies are popping up. But in my stance, it's really just white supremacy's last hurrah. It's like, now they've opened up recruitment for everybody. Anybody can get a part of this if you just say what we're saying, right? And if you can feel the way that we feel about how we feel about our position as men, then you can be over here too. And then maybe somehow we can convince everybody else. But the truth is, people are moving on to that, and what they're moving on from is back to what the original thing was. And that was my point about like the ancestors' hands being on us, and like the pronoun conversation. That's not new. It's new to modern people. That's not new to nobody else. It was never just he and she. ever. Not at one time before white supremacy popped up. Before these, Constantinople and like the rise of Christianity and all, like none of that stuff was that the only way that was that they have tried to force us in, and this resistance to it and this breaking out of the box from it is just a return, because life is cyclical. Everything on this planet that wasn't put here, and that's a whole nother conversation, but aside from the rectangles and squares and stuff, most of the natural elements here are round. They're circles. We live on a circular planet. Things are cyclical in nature, and so even as I work in Web3, I work in tech, and it's like you see a lot of people creating tech solutions that are really just highly digital ways to do ancient shit. They missed so many generations of existence, right? A 23-year-old, they don't know that like maybe 40 years ago, this was already a thing, or like certainly 140 years ago, the more analog version of this thing existed, that it's not their idea, but that thing was necessary because all of the technology took away from some of the things that are basic, that we, you know what I mean? The ancestors were inspired to create them for a reason. And so I don't know. I just really wonder when people say a lot of things, with whose brain are they thinking, and like where did these thoughts come from? Because there are older thoughts. There are more inherent thoughts, and there are more native thoughts that are really true to your alignment. And even since I've like tapped into that for myself, like it's helped me be comfortable with a lot of what I'm seeing, because it is isolating as a Black woman, especially again, just because of the way that Black women, we are uniquely oppressed. We are dichotomously oppressed. You know what I mean? So our oppression is not necessarily the exact same as Black men. There's definitely a Venn diagram there, but we certainly have our own unique and equal.
Venn diagram. Yeah.
We certainly have our own unique and equal oppression. But a part of the other side of that oppression is the privilege that it seems that we, despite not having male privilege and despite being Black women, we do seem to be faring a lot better across the board in every capacity. And again, I just think that that's a lot of that is attached to our willingness to be in because of the emotional nurture that we receive as kids. Like girls are just allowed to feel more. They're allowed to explore more through feeling. So I feel like that's why you kind of see, and maybe if there were more fathers who had like traditional ideals of what a father should be, like that, we wouldn't experience what we experience in the Black community, and that would be a travesty, right? So I think that a lot of like the growth and the progression and stuff like that Black women are being able and blessed to be able to make is just because we don't have a reliance on some shit that somebody told us should be. We are collectively trying to figure out what feels best for us and what's truest to us as individuals, whether that looks like taking on multiple sexual partners, because that's not new in the history of the world. That's not a modern thing. Any of the ancient queens, any Cleopatra, any, you know what I mean, Nefertiti, any, except for Queen Elizabeth, because she was virginal, but she probably wasn't a virgin either. You know what I mean? But Godiva, like, that's not being in your power and sexual prowess as a woman is certainly one of the ways that we have been oppressed. And I can say, having a vagina, that there's definitely something to it. The more that you become aware of it, and the more that you become aware of the inherent energy that it produces, and I'm not even just talking about like being seductive, I'm talking about it as like a battery attached to your body. There's definitely energy that comes through the root chakra. You feel what I'm saying? And energy that can control when you control it. So, and there is something different about, maybe not greater than, but there's certainly something different about that than the energy of a phallus, And I would not be surprised if the people, the ancients, maybe some man that was tired of it, you feel what I'm saying, knew that and was like, yeah, this is the new wave. Like, this is the shit we finna get on. Cause this other shit, like, I can't get jiggy like I want to. Like, it's, you know what I mean? Like, it's just too many. And so, and I've been thinking about that a lot too. I do think that, again, numerically, with just the number of women on the planet, I would not be surprised if somewhere in our ancient history that's been erased and destroyed now, if women were the controlling social order and class, and if there's not some kind of like genetic or cellular memory of men and even other women that are like afraid of that and don't want to go back to that. And I often think the same thing about Black people too. I do think it's true that Black people, have been oppressed by white people for 4,000 years, but I think that Black people oppressed white people for 44,000 years. And when I say Black people, I mean all the original melanated people on the planet. I think that we were the majority. I think that they were an anomaly or a minority. I think that we're humans too. I do not think we were kind. Okay, I think, because I can see that with the way that we treat each other. I do not think we were kind.
Very
evident. I do not think that we took very good care of that responsibility. And the thing about karma is It's not just some shit that you're waiting to happen for you, right? Like karma is
Right.
like energy that's
Generational.
consistently rolling. It's always rolling. This is karma for some shit I did. Who even know? You know what I mean? You having this and being able to do it's karma for some shit you did. You know what I mean? Like how this is received will be karma for some other shit we did. So that's just shit that we can't even control. But I definitely think that what we are in is in a revelatory and reflective and coming out of a period of punishment. We're coming out of a period of correction. We're coming out of a period of balance. Like in the balance being us giving what we gave. And I say that as representing dual identities. And I think that the next step is how do we not do the things that we did before, and how do we not use our current environment and like an environmental circumstances and emotions to like fog up and deter us from seeing the clarity of this is why we're here right now. How about we don't ever act this way? How about we all agree not to ever act the ways that we've acted that has gotten us to this point?
What's up? What's up? What's up? What's up? We interrupt your scheduled programming to bring you the next edition of the Expression of Rhyme, the newest segment of my podcast where I interject a rap verse into the conversation, dealing with touching on one or more of the topics that my guests and I are engaging in. Now, as you can see, this is a very unique episode. It's the first episode with this format where I am sharing some of the things that I didn't feel that I was able to say at the time, and that I just couldn't say at the time because of the emotional impact that this conversation was having on me, which is not in any way negative. Especially not saying it was a negative emotional impact, like negative towards my sister Keisha or anything, but it was having a strong impact and an intense impact as we continued through the conversation, as you'll continue to see throughout the rest of this episode. And so this rap verse that I have for you is written in a way that provides some of the thought process that was going through my head during the actual conversation. But this, just like the many snippets in the episode where I pause and interject some of my own thoughts or some of what was happening in my mind during the recording of this conversation. It's not meant to be, some sort of fight starter or argument. So yeah, please like and subscribe. It helps the algorithm, helps me get this podcast out there and create this wonderful platform, or expand, I guess, this wonderful platform where people can come and share their thoughts and opinions and facts and stories, which is what I love doing. So like and subscribe if you have not had the chance already, and make sure you let me know your favorite line in the comment section. Check out the verse. Whiteness, brightness, find this, fight this. Precisely what is you doing with your life? This conversation is riddled with inner contemplation. How can I write this? Might just get it going with an extraordinary deep dive into what I see simply core to every seat life provides. Like the gender binary, I can tell a woman from a man with my wee eyes, yet the claim is that people ain't what they seem. I kinda don't get it, sis. At least not when the claim is my common sense is coming from white supremacists of the past that lied just to oppress women or to eliminate the black image. Just can't be true in my view, but I'm still learning, still trying to provide for myself and still earn it. All the experiences I can get my hands on, traveling the world with my big boy pants on. So y'all just take everything that you hear with a grain, and know there's always way more out there for you to gain. Wisdom don't come to those who run from the strain. It comes to the courageous who endure the growing pain. So shout out to Keisha for today's conversation. It inspired these lyrics I'm throwing into rotation, and pass your favorite line around like it's a blunt to show them how we get down on the expression of love. Now back to your regularly scheduled programming. You raised so many points that flew by so damn fast. I remember like three of them. In terms of that I can respond, that I want to respond to. Thank you for that. It's a bit of a brain dump, but it was very, very great. And also, it's like, So, man, okay. You know, it's when you go to respond and then some of
Right,
the
now I
stuff
feel
starts
it.
coming back right when you want to. Okay,
Mhm.
let me slow. Let me namaste myself real quick. One thing that makes me curious is you mentioned that the pronoun movement. I'm just calling that for simplicity.
Yeah.
Um, or even just the sort of gender identity politics or the gender identity movement as a whole, which includes the zers
Right.
and whatnot, is I guess 4,000 years and beyond was very normal.
Yeah, 10,000 years ago.
10,000
Yeah, I
years
mean
ago.
8,000 years ago
Hmm.
before Christ.
So before the or I guess after the Younger Dryas catastrophe that wiped out everything, we just been on some binary shit that might not be natural for the planet. And
It's truly all tied back to the dark ages and the spread of Christianity. You know, that's not coming for Christianity, but everything, because Jesus' own people, the Hebrews, did not just know he and she, you know, and that's what I mean when I'm talking about the Talmud and the Hebraic text. The text that Jesus would have been reading from would have informed him and assigned him, you know, have told him of over, like I said, a hundred plus gender assignments of God's divinity. You know, so you got to think that according to the prophet that he was even working with a different set of knowledge. That's why I know when people be talking about, oh, Jesus wouldn't like, you don't know who Jesus was, because Jesus is not working with the same information that you're working with about him. Like, you feel what I'm saying? Like, Jesus lived in an entirely different world. So that's like and you got to think, who does it benefit to serve that? So let's talk about this. Let's talk about how in tropical countries, the islands, Africa, Southeast Asia, but also in Europe, and this happens in America too, but we know that they like to play with medical records here in the United States. It's something closer to like two out of every, it's like something like 2 out of every 6 or 1 out of every 5 people is born with a congenial genital defect.
okay, this is another one that I have looked and looked and looked to try and confirm, and I haven't been able to confirm that. Um, the only thing that I've found is that most genital birth defects do not pertain to your gender, like that, like do not point to you being the opposite gender of what your DNA, what your genes say that you are, what your whole makeup basically says that you are. That most of the defects do not suggest that you are a gender that some sort of gender outside of the male and female gender assignments. So that I haven't, so I found that in looking to confirm or deny what I was told here, and I've also found that 0.018 people are born intersex, which is very related to your gender, and out of that 0.018% of people that are genuinely intersex, they don't, most of the time, don't fall directly in the middle, that they lean towards male or they lean towards female in a lot of ways, and probably either like can't have children, or can't do something, that would separate them from like having normal function of their reproductive space or whatever. But those are the only two things that I've been able to find on reputable sites. And then it's just it's just a thing where I don't know if you guys caught it, but where before this was claimed to be true, which it could be. Again, leave a comment, leave links in the comments. But there was this thing that my sister said. She said we like to play with the data in the United States. I just, is that what do y'all think? Again, just leave a comment. Leave a comment with the timestamp. What do you guys think? Okay, back to the show.
Defect. So that means that either there's a woman that's not going to have a period in her lifetime because she has testes in her stomach. It's a man whose penis is maybe just qualifiable as a penis, but it's really only slightly larger than a clitoris. You know what I mean? It's a woman who maybe has a clit, but her vaginal lips are fused together for whatever reason. These are all things that would have been they're the Native American two spirits. Like, these are all things that would have been recognized and have been recognized by our ancestors. It's literally only us, as we've existed since really around the 1400s, 1200s, that have started to have issues with these things, and that's why the Dark Ages are dark. The Dark Ages, the Dark Ages required that information being wiped out. It's always the thing for me that people are so comfortable with the limited amount of knowledge that they possess.
So then, okay, so do you? Just thinking out loud, do you not have an evolution sort of attitude towards what human beings are doing, or do you more so have you more so adopted the attitude that um we're just doing, and there isn't any evolution or de-evolution about it? It just sort of is whatever it is, kind of thing. Because if I guess what makes me think that is if there was this, it feels like a natural progression towards a binary from a 100, which is just, it's hard to wrap my mind around that because I yeah, deformities and stuff like that. Yes, sure, absolutely, but it's still to a very tangible sort of degree. I look at you and I know you're a woman,
But
right?
you don't, though.
No,
You
no,
don't.
I don't. I'm trying to acknowledge that, but I'm just trying to use for simplicity.
Well, that's the thing,
What
though.
sort of?
I guess that's my point in saying the numerical thing, is that it's not simple. The binary seeks to make things that are not simple. The binary is a function of supremacy. The binary is a means to control the chaos that would make the organization impossible. If it's truly 1 in 6 people in other places being in, that's not a deformity, bro. That's another type of gender. That's the truth that we have to. If it's that many people, that's not an anomaly, and it's not fair to consider their existence so out of the realm when it's that many of them being born. That means that God got something else going on that maybe because we weren't in those, rooms, you don't know about. I know women that did not know they were not women. They just thought that they could not have children because they weren't bleeding, but they're not a woman. And now that they popped out and they on their boy stuff, it's like, oh wow, you damn near actually are a boy, and I can see that too. So this is what I will say, is that I think that chaos is divine, and I think that organization is inherently demonic.
So chaos is divine, and organization is inherently demonic. I kept thinking about this claim from here on out because it put a lot of things that already went by really fast into perspective for me. Like, of course, if you view organization as inherently demonic, which I guess I'll just put, I received it as very, very bad. So organization, order, if you will, is inherently very, very bad. Then of course the organization of the data and results and things that are used to make sense of the world, to make sense of behavior, you could say, is going to be viewed as coming from a bad place, or it seems it will. I don't know. Let me know, Keisha, if you're watching this. Let me know in the comments. Um, and some of the things that were said earlier definitely fit into that argument that order or organization is very, very bad by default, and chaos is divine, very, very good by default.
And I think that when we look at the universe and we look at all of these other things, we see way more chaos than we see organization. That's not because even in God's like love for multiplicity, you know what I mean, and duplicitness and patterns, every single thing is still slightly different.
Slightly off, slightly wiggly.
We're dealing with a guy that can have finite precision, laser precision, but he still, chooses to make each design just a little bit more chaotic or a little bit, you know what I mean, more zany than the last. It's like it's just something that's chaos, bro. Because the easier thing would have just been to put us off on a manufacturing thing, like right, like we're made of clay. Put us on a rolling rack and just roll us out. But no, like there's this attention to the chaotic details. The fact that some people are blind, the fact that some people don't have a hand, the fact that some people are born with diseases. Some, you know what I mean? Like that's chaos. And that's somebody that's from an intellectual perspective, obviously we can't fathom the mind of God, but that's obviously somebody that's not interested in the mundane. They're not interested in the repetition. They want to see or are allowing for things to like move to themselves, like move for themselves. So to your answer about devolution versus evolution, I
Yeah.
think that being linear is a supremacist thought. I think
Okay.
that white people taught us that things go on a up and down scale, and
One,
that's
two, three,
another
four,
form of
five. Okay.
organization. You know what I mean? I think that the natural order of the earth is the cycle. That's why women bleed. That's why it rains at the same time every season. That's why the raindrops are circular. That's why, you know what I mean? It's a cycle. And so I think that what you get is that going through that, it's like the thing that's in Kofa. You got to go to where you've been before to go ahead, right? It's like in that constant cycle, like, yeah, you do get something different that you didn't get before. Every time you watch a movie, you don't see the same thing. You always see something new. But at the end of the day, just like an old person goes back to being an infant, essentially, they have to wear diapers, they have to be taken care of, they don't have no hair, they got to be fed. It's like, does that negate all of their lifespan and all the achievements and all the accomplishments they made before they turned back into an infant? No. The fact that women, essentially, after menopause, to be a crone, to be menopausal, is essentially to really start to cross back over that gender threshold, right? Because menopause and menstruation is really the thing that separates like females from males. Like you can give milk at your nipples. You have milk ducts behind your nipples. You feel what I'm saying? The only thing, you have a penis. It's made from the same materials my clitoris and coochie lips are made from. The only difference about you is that you don't have the function to bleed. So once I lead the function to bleed and I start to go bald and I start to grow facial hair and you get more estrogen, because that's what happens to men, they get more estrogen, they start to lose testosterone, we really start to turn back into one another anyway.
That's so interesting. It's so interesting to like think about and try to conceptualize. I mean, I think on a surface level, and probably because I'm just trying to conceptualize it now, I don't know if I logically agree with one of the points, which is that chaos might be more akin to divinity than order, and order might be more akin to the bad guy than the other. That either one has to do with sort of like a right or wrong kind of ideology. But But that said, it's still very interesting to um, to think about, like, I guess how you said it, how we obviously live in a universe, or we're created by this super intelligence that always um, inserts anomalies into a majority, or a majority in terms of form, but like hella anomalies within that majority of form, and that within the form, then there you sort of find the chaos. You find the order in terms of the form, and you find the chaos when you go into depth, and and spiritually, because it's almost too easy to separate the spiritual from the material,
Right.
um, mentally, but spiritually, there's no such thing as reality.
Right.
There's no such thing as order, really, or chaos. It just there's sort of the mind which interprets something that is objective, but the interpretation is not objective. It's just
Right.
interpreting something that's objective that will never be words, that will never be ideas, or even conclusions and observations, because emotions play a huge part in what you're in how you interpret what you're observing in the objective world. But emotions are never accurate. They're never, or should I say, mine never are never yours, right? My emotional intake input, or output from an input is never your emotional output from from the same input. And so that's, man, this is why I needed you on the show. You're gonna come back, so I need you to come back.
Mm.
We gonna, we we could make 6 shows off of like every question that you answer. Okay. But
And I also just want to say, for me,
mhm.
though there is a connotation of good and bad, divinity and the opposite, being demonic, are not inherently good or evil, since essentially being demonic is a form of divinity too. It's just more so speaking to the pervasiveness and omnipotence of divinity versus the finite and oppressive quality of what can be demonic. And I think that, to your example of like the form, like, yes, thank God, right? I mean, just even thinking about the inner workings of the ear, right? Like this
Right.
little piece has like 75 parts that include like fibers and electrons and bone. And it's like, damn, the attention to detail is crazy. And thank God that's ordered in the way that it is, because I can hear. But if you start to think about, like you're saying, perception and spiritual existence, we've talked about this before, that once people as a race, if humanity doesn't destroy themselves first, is ever able to really truly transcend and ascend, we will lose our physical forms. That order won't be necessary. That order is what keeps us tied to the ground. Dante called it, he called gravity sin. He says it's the weight of sin that keeps us tied to the ground. You find that in different Christian and spiritual principles in general, even of the idea of like, oh, well, I have this internal organ system, right? And I got these bones around my body. But if I say that the devil gonna get to me, where is he touching me at? He's not touching the outside of he's touching my heart.
Something
He's touching the
intangible,
thing,
yeah.
yeah, he's touching the things that are ordered. It's the thing about me that's not really contained. It's my spirit. It's my mind that we think, or we like to think, always has a certain type of sovereignty amongst the ills of the world because of its connection to the omnipotent, the formless, right? That's where a lot of people gain hope in going back to. They might think of heaven as a place where they still have a body and stuff, but really they think of heaven as being reconjoined with the all, which is a formlessness, and that's cool. We all understand to a relative degree it is the order that we have to abide by, whether it's living in our physical bodies or the laws of the land, that do limit us to a relative degree and that do make us vulnerable for as much as they empower us within this particular environment.
Hmm. Hmm. Well, that, yeah, absolutely, and that understood. I think there is also something, very very natural and not necessarily oppressive about the desire to maintain at least most of a status quo as well, like the society as it is today, or be it labeled as patriarchal, demonic, something where there is a lot of pseudo order, or like this illusion of order amongst a chaotic race of beings called humans. That there's something natural about wanting to more so improve that than just have fun with something for a while and then destroy it and then have fun with something completely new and completely creatively never seen before, or never seen by us before, and way too far back in genetic memory to remember vividly. Because like I naturally want to say certain things that are like, yeah, but with all of the flaws, I don't want the societies that have um, let's say, improve human to human relations to a large degree be to just go to war. Well, and by go to war, I mean like the worst kind, right? Apocalypse or whatever. To just enter the end game and just be destroyed, so that we can, whoever survives, or the new thing that if we all die or whatever, can just build something completely new, because it's very beautiful here. You know what I'm saying? Like,
Depends
I
on your
won't go.
perception, though, right? Because a lot of people would say it's incredibly ugly, and they would be correct as well, because two things can be true at
Absolutely,
the same time.
absolutely, but it's definitely, um like, I think, depending on what you've been influenced by, like you said, there's a lot of most things are subjective, but there are some things that are
Absolute.
really close to absolute.
Mm-hmm.
And I think it's a fact that if you can if you have a certain level of awareness, that you just know by looking around that there's way more beauty than there is ugliness. Just like just like there's way more neutral days than there are bad days, but our memory stores and brings up to the surface memory of bad days way more than
Yeah.
neutral times that you don't really think about, because it's just whatever, or even happy times, because it doesn't do the same thing. But there's so my point is, it's just so beautiful here. Like, we live in a house. We don't got to worry about flies and shit all up in our food. In a lot of first world countries, and certain things are just way better. And there is something nice to say about the personal responsibility and working really hard aspect, that I don't agree with all points on. But there's something nice to say about that sort of rhetoric, that sort of indoctrination of being a model, a role model, a person in today's society that, what I'm saying, that has order to it. But again, just sort of thinking out loud, I I tend to definitely try to stay, um to touch both sides of the fence in all of these conversations. But you have brought things to me just now that I've never even.
Well, it's such a blessing that you still get that feeling after almost over a decade of friendship. It's really
Every time,
encouraging
sis,
that you
it
still
don't
feel
stop.
that.
You like
And I
Diddy.
feel like at this point, we pretty much talked about everything that can be talked about. But I guess it's also like, like we were saying in conversation the other day, like, I'm getting older too. So some of these things I've never thought about before. I've never thought about them in the way that I've thought about them, and they're not reflective of how I would have felt 10, 15 years ago. And 20 years ago, I wouldn't have thought about none of this stuff at all. But, living in the world and surviving in it and existing in it. And also, too, tech has been a great godsend for me, because I get to see other people. I get to see
Yeah.
how much of my existence has been informed truly by all the projections and weight that have been thrust at me since birth, just by living in here. And for all of my blackness and my dark blackness, and on top of that, in my vocal blackness, right? Because I'm not a black person that can affect a white voice. I'm never going to sound like a white woman. I can speak, less colloquially, but you're always going to hear the blackness in my voice. It's always been very interesting to me that, I'm so received and I'm so accepted. And I'm not gonna lie, I mean, definitely I can tell, the intimidation and the threat factor, just anti-blackness is all over the world. And this is also why I say too, that I do believe that I've always believed that white people know something don't nobody else know. Like, they know something about something that only they know, right? But now I'm starting to think that other people, all the people of the world, know something about us that we don't know. And because we are so busy trying to be everything and everybody else, we can't see it about ourselves. And that's how they also keep us in check, right?
So here's another good point of where I didn't necessarily know how to respond to to something I just heard, where the assertion, or I'm not sure what to call it. I'm going to call it an assumption, but I don't mean that in with negative connotation. That's the closest word that's coming to mind right now. The assumption that white people know something everyone else doesn't know, and brown people and everyone else knows something about blackness and black people that we don't know. When I heard it, I immediately thought of the linear thought is white supremacy claim, and the order is bad and chaos is good stuff from earlier in the conversation. And again, please just, like, leave comments. I'm gonna read them all. I'm gonna respond to as many as I feel, are good to respond to, a good idea to respond to. But I immediately thought of a couple things that were already said, and how, again, I was a little bewildered by by this thought that white people, because of their white skin, know something that brown and yellow and black people don't know because of their skin color, and that black people don't know something that everyone else knows because of their skin, or because of the skin of their lineage, which essentially is their skin. I don't know. Somebody help me out. Somebody help me out here, please.
That's how they
Back
also
to
keep
the
us in
show.
check, right? I've heard from like different Eastern people, people from India, people from Japan, that in some ways, like Black people are Pakistan, that some ways Black people are supposed to be like the spiritual teachers of the earth. I've heard that in other communities, that when they look at Black people, they be really looking at us thinking like, according to whatever text or whatever, like, cultural understanding they have, that Black people are either some of the oldest people, or Black people are some of the people that are closest to God. And so we do have a unique and divine, and you can see that. That's why entertainment hits, and that why when we say words, they hit. The words that we say, the language, that's a primal thing in the brain. So the fact that Black people as a community, any Black person on any day can issue one word out into the universe, or issue it in a way that it's not being used, and all of a sudden the whole
Right, a
world,
song, whatever. Right.
every single one of us got that power. Any Black person can say anything, and people gonna want to start saying it. But it's because there's something about the way that we communicate. You know what I mean? And the understanding, like, obviously, like 5%ers are great at that, right? 5%ers are great at the puns and the word games, and like seeing like the divinity and the mundane, and being like, no, but do you really know what you're saying when you're saying it though? Like, it making it clear, like, oh wow, I was saying that, wasn't I? Right? But Black people do that all the time.
Right.
We've been doing that. When we say keep it real, you know what I mean? When we say that's dope, when we say that's cool, all of these things mean a specific thing, and also convey a specific emotional state of being, more so than just an adjective. And that's also why when other communities try to use AAVE, they fall short. Because you literally don't have the context, or like, I can start speaking Italian right now. I'm not an Italian person. And that might sound sexy to somebody that ain't never heard Italian, but to an Italian person, it's not going to hit the same because I'm not Italian.
Right.
You know what I mean? Like, it's just, I don't have, and that's also what I think is so unique about like people of the world. Like, something gave us all language, but the fact that he gave us different ways to use our brain center, they gave us different ways to use our brain center. I really believe that when an Italian person is speaking Italian, they're speaking with a nuance and with a context that's divine, that only they can communicate truly what it is that they mean. And only person who resonates on that same frequency can understand it. That's why the, Quran is so beautiful to people, because the Islamic, text, first of all, is beautiful to look at, but in Arabic, there's a certain thing and a certain frequency that they're hitting those words with, that those, the verbs and the vowels and the sounds that they produce. It's something significant about it. It's something that's really, truly holy about it for people, right? And so that's like, the fact that we as a community like possess that power means something to me.
And this last point is an example, as well as some other things throughout the whole episode, but look, I can't stop for everything, right? But this was a significant part of the episode that reminded me why I love this woman so much. Like, why did she's a sister to me, that even when we do have conversations where I say things like I don't know what to do with what I just heard and stuff like that, that it's never coming from some sort of place where I think something bad about how her mind works or anything like that, because like just how deeply she thinks about things is always going to be super interesting to me, and why I love to converse with her and do shows like this with her, because of stuff like what she just broke down. I thought that was super interesting.
Something to me. You know what I mean? And I know that other people can feel that too. We just haven't recognized that's what we are. Like, you know what I mean? We're, like I said, we're really still very much worried about like assimilation on a lot of different levels. You know what I mean? And I do find it the worst with our men. You know, our men seem to suffer really, really badly from that. And I don't know if it's like what gives black women thick skin. Well, obviously, some black women are suffering too. You know, you obviously got a lot of black women that have had their body type sold back to them. You know, you got black women that have had, you know, that are indebted to the Kardashians, like, you know, would sacrifice a child for them. You know what I mean? Like, you have black women that are like clearly on the wrong, you know, or like don't appreciate or value who they are either, and are looking for that acceptance and affirmation through becoming something else, you know. But I think that in general, you do have a lot of black women that have just a very tough skin about acceptance. And when I think about what makes us so much tougher than our counterparts, like why can we accept being cast the way that we are? And I feel like a part of it is just like the conditioning of beauty. Like, I think that beauty as a social currency is such a strong thing, and to be impoverished of it or to be like indebted to it is like such a like, it's fucked up, but it's such a necessary like skill builder,
Do you
right?
mean do you mean beauty as an inherent beauty, or beauty as a costume?
Beauty as a social standard.
Okay.
I mean, that black women not being considered beautiful, and then oftentimes not even being considered women and or feminine, because we, you know, we're not privy to the social standard of beauty, has allowed us to, for as much as it's hurt us, it's allowed us to exist in a lot freer than what I see black men exist in. And I think that the correlation is that black men don't have beauty to rest on. Black men have masculinity to rest on. And so when masculinity looks like provision, it looks like money, it looks like women, it looks like all of these things, and there's no affirmation of, but also no inherent denial of something as arbitrary but as solid as being beautiful. It's a lot harder to like build an esteem around that. You know what I mean? Because am I doing it right? Is it enough? Is it gonna get me where I need to be? Is it gonna make me this type of man? Like, you feel what I'm saying? Like, there's like so many intangible barriers where being beautiful is like, oh, so you saying that if I just got bigger breasts and I, you know, put some skin bleaching cream on and I stand out my nose a little bit, then I would be pretty? Like, that's easy. That's an easy barrier to entry. Not easy like financially, not
No,
easy.
but yeah, yeah, yeah,
You know
yeah.
what I mean? That's a lot
It's
easier
not the
to
same
say.
as being a provider, and just all the shit that men and black men in particular uh,
Right.
face.
But a
Yeah.
lot of that is not even y'all's to begin with. You know what I mean? And so that's why I really just be trying to like get black men to understand, like, and we have a lot of black men that have come to that understanding and can admit it in those words, which is, yeah, like, maybe I am the white person of black people. Maybe I do want whiteness. Maybe I do want the things that I think whiteness provides. But that's still a large emotional hurdle for a lot of black men to say, because they'll, you know, rationalize it till tomorrow's end. That's not what they want. But I think that, again, we don't have a lot of innovation or imagination in this particular country. And our prototypes come from very real places, you know?
And then this one is something I completely disagree with on on all levels. The black men are the white men of black people in some way, shape, or form. Black men are um, practicing white supremacy on black women, or somehow oppressing black women in the same way that white supremacy did in the slavery and Jim Crow eras of this country. I don't understand it, and I don't agree with it at all. And I remember also at this point that I started to get a feel of just how much it seems that my sister does not really fuck with white people because of the color of their skin. It seems. Correct me if I'm wrong. But um white, like, attributing oppression to whiteness in this way, where the the way that it comes out very naturally, very fluidly, is black men are also partially suffering because some of them are realizing, oh, maybe I am going for whiteness. Maybe I do want the things that I think whiteness provides. And it's in this whole context of how black women are uniquely oppressed, and or just black people are oppressed. And some of how it happens is they make black men turn into white supremacists. I it just, yeah, if I mean, if I heard that from anybody at all ever in my life, I would think, okay, you really don't like white people. You really, your general attitude towards white people is one of a monolithically evil people. And I don't subscribe to that myself. I don't assume that of my sister. I simply started to think that this might be the case around this moment in our conversation because of the repeated statements like that, which is why in a few minutes you'll hear me ask, what exactly is white supremacy, and the answer to that, as you'll hear, spoiler alert or whatever, the answer to that is, it's an institution. And she said, and she says a little bit more than just it's an institution. She explains a little more about her view on what white supremacy actually is. The color of your skin does not determine your character. The trauma that you bring into the world and the anger and frustration that you bring into the world as a newborn infant and stuff like that also doesn't necessarily make you a person that can't grow, or can't notice your own shortcomings and be a great human being, no matter what your skin color, no matter what your background, no matter what your lineage, no matter of any of that. And yes, there will be people who are born who have a natural proclivity to turn, or a natural tendency, I guess, to turn into things like narcissist or sociopath or psychopath. That will also always happen. But thinking that that's because of the color of someone's skin, or that there's more white people who turn out to be like that or whatever without empirical data to back it up, I think is not necessarily the way to go. And I didn't know how to say that without sounding like I just want to argue with you all day. And there was a lot of thoughts like that already up to this point, and there will be more down the line where I felt like that. So I didn't speak up for myself or for like what I believe in some of these instances where some kind of anti-whiteness and anti-black menness seemed to be seeping through. Leave a comment. Let me know your thoughts. Let's keep going.
And so I would question every man's desire to be a real man, or what they think a man looks like. Again, who told you that, and who are you thinking about when you think about that? Because a lot of times I notice that black men don't even know other black men that are like who they think they should be like. So then that leaves me to ask, well, who is it that you're trying to be like? Who is it that you're aspiring to be, and why?
Yeah, like what is greatness, right? What is greatness in the human story? You know what I'm saying? Like if there is an example, or if there isn't an example of greatness, then how do you measure greatness? And then obviously there's a need or a desire that hits a very significant amount of people to be great and to be considered great and to be remembered as great when we're gone. But if we sort of jump from one example to another just because this is the hot greatness of the week, or this is the hot greatness of the month, or whatever, and we don't really have a solid, and we can't study them and really see, is this something, and see how it resonates with our spirit, see, is this something that I really do want to emulate and want to become like within my own way, then yeah, that will probably spell for disaster. If that keeps happening and spreading through generation and generation, something's going to pop eventually in the wrong way.
I mean, we see it with the R. Kelly conversation. You know, so many black men and women's favorite things. Okay, but Harvey Weinstein did it, Jeff Epstein, and that right there proves to me too that a lot of black people, men and women, just want to exist without the accountability and without the consequence that they'll have from performing the behaviors of whiteness. Whiteness, thanks to white supremacy, gets to exist in a very singular, non-accountable, non-confronted way. And black people would love to, and that's also just a part of being abused and oppressed. That, yeah, some people try to work through abuse and oppression by being a better person and thinking about why that person did that to them and making sure that they never fall into the pitfalls that would make them that. A lot of people also now want to find somebody to abuse and oppress. That's hazing. That's a lot of work culture. You know what I mean? It's a lot of relationship culture. Like, you feel what I'm saying? Like, that's what people be looking for. They be looking for somebody to treat the way that they perceive and feel and probably are true about how they've been treated. And so when it comes to black people, yeah, we have it really bad. And that's also, and we don't have accountability around wanting to have that conversation. That's why you'll get black women that will become CEOs and be worse than white men. You know, that's why you'll get black men that are the terrors in their environment in the way the white men are. And you'll still find that grandmother and that mother and that aunt and that best friend and that sister that, oh no, he's a good guy, he made a mistake. He don't mean that, you know? Even though he's habitual about it, you know? And the inability, and I think it's mainly because we think that we're only 13% of the population. So I don't know if it's a numerical thing, but it's the inability of us to address one another about it. You know, as many male friends as I've had, and I talk to Ayende about this a lot, it's not that it becomes more difficult to be my male friends, but certainly my experience and my tenure as a woman changes the nature of our relationship. Now, it doesn't change the core of the kindredness of our spirits, right? You know, y'all my brothers, y'all always gonna be my brothers. It's our spirits that have a connection. But I can see as a woman how there are things that you're not seeing and how they're actually leading into a greater picture of what women in general are experiencing and how also them ideals are not serving you. You know what I mean? And I can see also too, like, because of the way that black women have been oppressed by their mates, you know, black femicide is at an all-time high. You feel what I'm saying? Black women have always been more likely to be killed by their spouse or their, you know, partner or a man in their family in general. I can look at how that anger, that rage, that sexual abuse, that sexual repression, that darkness gets taken out on a lot of different conversations. I mean, I can talk about a whole bunch of different things with it. You know, I mean, they might be mad at me for this one, but I really feel like you know, pegging is like a thing in our community now. You know, and that's cool. You know, everybody's kink is their kink, but in the work that I do, because you know that I do sexual work. You know, I do research. You know, I go out here and I have the conversation with the people candidly. Talk to me about how you feel. I have found that the allure for a lot of women for pegging, at least as it exists in this community, at least is what it's been told to me and during my research,
Right.
is the idea of enforcing power and wielding control over another person with a phallus. And it's not enough to just strap another woman. No, you want to penetrate a man because you need him to know, you know, what it feels. You need to be in control of something that he can't say no to. You know, you need to be put in a position of all power. And that's just the danger of a phallus in general. That's just what the phallus does. I don't know. As like you say, it's like the yoni. The yoni got its way of acting. The phallus got its way of acting. It's just what the phallus does. It makes people different. It changes something about the way that they behave. But when I was, you know, having those conversations, and like a lot of them was like, yeah, like I like to peg a man when he don't really want me to peg him, or I like to peg a man like to convince him to let me peg him, or I feel like because I was able to peg him randomly that one time, he should just like bend over and let me peg him whenever. I'm like, sis, see, that's your trauma talking. You know what I mean? That's that every time that happened to you and not ever seeing no way that the tables would ever be turned, and now you got the strap. It's never no fun when the rabbit have the gun. Ever. Ever. But the rabbit do get hold of the gun sometimes. You feel what I'm saying? And it's very, and this is what I was saying about the greater thing about, okay, truly to your point, is there a linear progression to be had, or are we going to continue to go in a circle? Well, if the rabbit can realize, damn, Elmer Fudd and ate up like my whole hood. Like, you feel what I'm saying? Like, all my niggas is gone. I got this gun. I got Elmer Fudd, right? What I'm gonna do about it? Am I gonna kill Elmer Fudd and then have all his homies come to the woods looking for him because he been shot in the woods and now he don't know that the rabbit shot him, but now all his friends are in the woods. So where we was just dealing with Elmer before, now we dealing with the whole hood of hunters because they came wondering who done killed it, and of course we gonna get shot because they just need some dinner tonight. It's like you gotta, you know what I mean? Like, what would be the best way for the rabbit to act in that situation? Should he let Elmer go free? Should he tell Elmer, don't ever come back to this neck of the woods with no gun? I'm going to keep this gun on me for safekeeping. What should the rabbit do? I don't know, because if I was the rabbit in an emotional sense, it's easy to think, yeah, now it's Elmer's turn now, you know? But is that a fallacy or is that a feature of human design? Is that a flaw or a feature? I don't know.
Well, and beyond human, you know what I'm saying? Just you push a spring down hard enough, it's gonna pop. I digress. I don't know either. What do you think? We're mainly victimized by, like, what is white supremacy? What is that?
An institution, first and foremost. It's a culture. It's an indoctrination. And it's a way of existence. It's and truly for the environment, it's clearly an existential crisis. But beyond that, as we exist in the interpersonal, yeah, it's an institution and it's an indoctrination into a culture of superiority and inferiority, of hierarchy, of chauvinism and misogyny and patriarchy, of racism, of colorism, of all the isms, rape culture, all of these things, and inherently white superiority is the fear of not being good enough. And I don't mean just like good enough in terms of like, oh my God, look at all these beautiful brown and black people. They're so great. And, we're struggling from like sunburns. I mean, no, what we're seeing very now, which is we are not possibly made of the stock that can keep us on this planet. We are not made in the way that these people are made. And because of that, and because of our other destructive tendencies, if we cannot stay, they cannot either. And if we're going to stay, then in order for us to exist, because we cannot do much by ourselves, we don't have the physical capacity, we don't give birth in the way that others on the planet do. We're sickly in a lot of different ways, not even just
You don't give birth in the way other.
No.
Oh, you mean like
the birth rate.
With racial? Oh, the birth. Yeah.
Like the birth rate. Like people are struggling across the world to give birth. All of these things, and they knew all of this when they were doing the scramble for Africa. They knew all of this whenever they came from, historically speaking, where they came from at the point in the timeline. Because remember, Caucasoid people did not always exist. That during ancient Sumeria and ancient Egypt and the ancient, how many ancient civilizations that were, centuries apart from one another existed before, Europe popped up, So it's not even like they were always an active part of the environment. So wherever they came from and however they came, they've always known that, genetically speaking, perhaps they're just not as strong as some of their peers here on the planet. And that's okay, because the fucking otter isn't as strong as the lion. I mean, it's a lot of, you feel what I'm saying? It's a lot of things on this earth like that. That if you're talking about mammals,
you think it's like a refusal to accept objective reality?
Well, I mean,
on the surface,
it's a hard question to answer because I'm not white and I can't speak to that. But like I said,
that's fair.
I do think there's something that they know that they don't want us to know, or that they all know that we don't know. And I think that maybe I think that maybe their survival is that thing. And I think, to be honest about, we are afraid that we will not exist. And that's what they're saying. That's literally what they're saying. The white nationalism, the great replacement theory, all of that shit, that's what they're saying. They're saying that white people are going extinct and they don't know what to do about it. That's literally what they're saying now. But imagine how long, and this is their great-great-grandchildren saying that. Imagine how many generations of wrestling with the inevitable it took for them to even get to this point with it. Like, right now, we're acting erratic and crazy as fuck because we're scared. We are scared. Now, the reason that I have a hard time answering questions about a white person's existential crisis is because, honestly speaking, and other white people will tell you this too, since they've been here, it's been an existential crisis for everybody else. You know, white supremacy is an existential crisis for me. So it's like, how do I live in the face of an existential crisis? How are my genes resilient in the face of an existential crisis? How have my lineage made it through these existential crises, right? I don't know. We just push through. And perhaps, maybe if white people, as a group, some of the dissenters amongst them, because obviously it's never all white people, but there's definitely enough of them that are on this wave for it to be a conversation and for it to be a real problem for the earth. Maybe if they just worked with us, truly worked with us, without looking to gain or take or supersede, but perhaps if we just work together, we could all stay here. I don't see why there's not no room for all of us. But there's certainly a unique thing about what the function of supremacy does, and the function of white supremacy is truly to ensure existence, and not just existence, but the best existence amongst all the beings. So much so that in order for them to stay on the earth, they have to serve you, which only ultimately serves your purpose of staying here on the earth.
Hmm. Yeah, it's an interesting dynamic for sure. Um, and I agree. It's almost not a fair question, but I had to ask it. You know what I'm
No,
saying?
I feel it. Yeah, I mean, it's good, like you said, to think about the other side, but I can't. I'm trying
Oh
to say,
yeah, yeah. It's
I'm
just
trying to survive
you
right
don't know,
now.
you don't
So I
know,
don't.
cause like yeah, for
Yeah,
sure.
like I'm trying to stay alive right now today. So I don't know. I can't even think about nobody else's fight for survival because I'm still
And
dealing with the consequences of everything else.
yeah, and even with statements like and I don't I take everything I'm saying with a grain of sand, it's grain of salt, grain of sand, whatever.
Mm-hmm.
But even with statements like I feel like they know something is that a genetic knowing? Is that a knowing? Like, is it a knowing in terms of in their mind in words they've put it together? And if so, like, is it when they're a teenager that they get this, or when they're
Right.
45? Like, do
I think
do all of them know?
it's cellular memory. I think it's
Cellular
cellular
memory.
memory, and honestly, I think that's why you kind of really just have the three categories of what it seems to be like, the way that white people coexist with everybody else in the world. You obviously have the white people that are very humble, very just normal people, not really, it's not about them being white, and they're very much so a part of whatever environment they're a part of, even if it looks like appropriation. We all know that white guy or girl that just truly grew up around black people. And just like an Asian guy or girl, they kind of turn into more black people because that's the
Right.
dominant culture.
No, that's my nigga. Yeah,
Yeah,
absolutely.
right. You have the white people that are more so, it seems like they're just waiting to see what's it going to be, And I look at Kim Kardashian like that. You're black and you're on the black wave when it's acceptable, but as soon as the world turns up and it's like scary to be black again, now you're taking out your ass, you're taking out your tits, now you dropping down 80 pounds, talking about you're the healthiest you ever been. Like the people that, and not just white people, but all of the groups of people that feel like they can take black people on and put black people off like a jacket. Like, oh, I'll just put them on and take them off. You know what I mean? When it's too hot. I feel like that's a very large group of white people, and that's why we don't have the social progress that we need, because this is who Martin Luther King was talking about. That if you're truly on some positive shit, if you're truly not a racist, then you would be doing everything in your power to either remove yourself from the racist or try to convert your racist family members. But no, too many of them sit comfortably in the racism waiting to see what's going to happen with it, right? And then,
Well, if I can make a point,
yeah,
um, I think human beings are even just a little too individualistic for what the great Dr. King was saying to be realistic. I don't. I think it's a little. Um, I was a converter type when I first got to vegan heaven. It don't really. It's not realistic. You know what I'm
no,
saying?
it's not.
And there are so many white people who have even committed, like Eminem has committed racist acts in his youth. I don't know the brother. I haven't been there, and I know the music industry can be very very wild in a lot of ways, especially spiritually. But if I were to guess, right? If I was to just guess, somebody held a gun to my head and say, "Is this somebody you think is a racist?" I would definitely say no. I just don't feel like that's true. Could be wrong.
Yeah, and I see and that's also kind of like where we're getting in this culture, and maybe it's just like general fatigue. I don't know, but somebody being racist, even casually, and this is the thing, it's like, what was the example you just gave before you started
Eminem.
talking Eminem? No, before you start talking about what
Oh,
was the thing, Dave?
I don't remember. I'm
I
sorry.
don't remember either, but it was something that was categorically not racism, right? Like anything else that you talk about, unless it's like a phobia, because like obviously fat phobia, transform phobia, like all of the like discriminatory, harmful things, the things that actually come for and harm or can lead to harm or can affirm harm of a person's existence, right? So somebody's saying, I think that it was veganism.
Yeah, my bad. Yes.
So veganism, while it can save people's lives and while it could be a good choice for most people, that's not an existential crisis. Honestly, if you want to eat meat or be on the Atkins diet or do keto, that's you, bro. And it might keep you alive longer. I can't speak to that.
No, absolutely.
What you know for a fact is that if a Eminem is sitting around some white people in a Michigan bar, and today he's not Eminem, and he's just this nigga's this nigga that, automatically by him doing that, he's giving other white people not only the credit to go say this nigga that too, but now some white person that's really willing to take it out to the full extent say, yeah, Marshall Mathers, Marshall hates these niggas. I'm definitely gonna go shoot one on Marshall's behalf. That's what I'm saying. Like, racism is too volatile for it to ever be okay. And if it's not atoning for it and saying, no, truly, that's not in my system, like I was just being, because I feel like, to your point, though Eminem did grow up on 8 Mile, I feel like he's a white person that puts us on and takes us off like a jacket when he wants to. I feel like there are a lot of white people in the entertainment industry that do that. That's my personal
Okay.
Yeah,
Okay.
that's how I feel. I've never liked it when black people say that he's their favorite rapper. I don't get it. No, for real. Like, it's just
No, I'm sorry that
yeah.
hit personally because he's definitely in my top three.
Yeah, and most of the black men that I know say that, and that's just really crazy to me, because to me that's the equivalent of saying, "Oh, I do this for women," and then still finding some men to go work with. Like,
So here's another example of when I wasn't sure exactly how to take what I just heard, because it's fine that, or let me just say, what confused me in this moment was the notion that Eminem, who is very uniquely positioned in the lyricist conversation because of his real skills with the pen that are not seen in a lot of other people's ability to use a pen. Like he's uniquely gifted and skilled, and he people that have worked with him that talk about him say he basically, from 9 to 5 every day he's in the studio working, and his work ethic is very high, and he's obsessed with words and getting words and cadences and things that make your rap sound the best. He's obsessive about those things, which is a part of what makes him great. And so I was getting sort of very very confused about how it's a negative thing to be black and view Eminem as one of your favorite writers or rappers or whatever, lyricists, whatever, because in your opinion he puts on blackness and then takes it off like a jacket, and or because he released a racially negative, a racist tape when he was 16 years old, and he's in his 40s now, and his career choices have not shown any type of like racist, objectively racist things at all. So yeah, I was confused here about that, like why it's a bad thing to be black and like his music and the rest. Let's keep going.
Like, it's so many black rappers to choose from, and the grand, I know it's black people that got harder bars than Eminem, but that's neither here nor there. Like, whatever. I just feel
Yeah, I
like,
mean, yeah,
yeah,
that's
I feel like
subjective.
yeah, I feel like he's one of them people that takes us on and put us off like a jacket, and I feel like that's even him saying like I've done some racist shit before. It's like, bro, if you really respected the culture, if you really was down there in 8 Mile with them people like you said you was, if you was really in the trenches, you would not allow, there would be no allowance of that. So that means that for you, you knew at a time when your whiteness was sovereign to whatever experience you had socially, and that you chose to lean into that. And people that can do that are, like I said, that's dangerous for us. And every time, because I even noticed that now that I'm working with different groups of people and stuff, and it's something that's actually starting to become a problem for me because I've addressed it with them, and the next time I address it is going to have to be like because it's an ideological thing for me. You talking about somebody still okay that they're racist, that they do racist things sometimes, that's not okay for me because that looks like danger and death for me. It looks like I said again, the consensus and the affirmation of danger and death for me. That's not okay. It's not okay to not agree about my basic human rights or to know that something is harmful and to say, oh, that person does that sometimes, but they're a human. They're just no. Racism is not okay. It's not. It's not. And what I find now in this world is that people are way more comfortable playing with black people around that than they are with anything else, I hear so many black people as a gotcha. I mean, so many people as a gotcha trying to reach for slavery or civil rights, or even some shit like the Will Smith situations when talking about black people. And it's like, you don't even have the context that you don't even have. You don't know enough to even be bringing up none of these examples. And it's ironic because I never hear anybody talk about Japanese internment camps. I never hear anybody say anything about the Holocaust. It's just really strange to me how people are so comfortable reaching for black oppression and black trauma and black plight. And I think that that's weird to me. So, I mean, I don't know. I feel like, I don't know what it is. And like I said, maybe it's just the general
You
fatigue
mean
of
like there's
black
no
people.
Nazis out there and there's no?
No, I'm talking about when people want to say, well, so and so happened, or well, this happened, and this person. People always reach for slavery examples. People always want to be like, well, slavery, or if this would have happened, then slavery would have never existed. It's like people that are not attached to the slavery trauma feel comfortable using slavery as an example for shit that don't even be making no sense. Does that make sense? Where they
Okay,
would
I just
never,
can't. I
where
can't hear an example in my.
they would never touch the Holocaust or any other group's oppression in the same way. They would never use it as an example because it did not happen to them.
These are Americans.
No, you're very hard pressed to find even a white American to say, well, the Japanese were in internment camps and they're not sad about it. But people will
Oh,
be like,
okay. I couldn't
yeah,
conceptualize
people will
what
be
they
like,
were
well,
saying.
why are you still talking about slavery? Or, well, you should understand this because your people were slaves. They
Hmm.
don't ever touch the Holocaust like that.
Hmm.
So this is the shit that I'm saying. Like,
Hmm.
people are too comfortable playing with black trauma. And like I said, maybe it's just black people's general fatigue and the desire to exist as anything other than black, which unfortunately in this country is not going to happen. In the world, you can certainly be something other than black. In this country, no. So, like I said, that's just very strange to me that people are always so comfortable reaching for our oppression and stuff. And like I said, perhaps black people being tired is why we're not checking that more often and more feverishly. But I start to get very worried when even those amongst us be like, oh, some racism a little here and there is okay, because it's not. It's really not. It's
And you're
not.
not saying that that's what I said, right? Because
Oh,
that's not.
I felt like when you saying that by Eminem having have been racist before, that you don't feel like he's racist. That
I didn't. I don't think he was ever racist ever. I think he has committed. Well, it's known that he released music that had racial slurs and racial lyrics in it when he was a 16-year-old. That has come out. That's been made public. You know what I'm saying? But no, I in general definitely ideologically lean more towards people can grow out of really, really, really horrible states of mind and things that they've learned and things that they've been taught. Because to me,
mm-hmm.
if you cannot grow out of horrible things that are even tied to your genetics or what have you, if you cannot grow out of, then we can't learn anything. It just that doesn't make sense for me. But it's interesting hearing because you back up what you say and how you feel with like what how you got there. And so yeah, I mean,
I mean, I would just say the last thing to that is that
hmm
you know it doesn't matter if Eminem had raped somebody at 16, he'd be on the offender registry right now. And while he might never want to rape somebody again, the law in the world to a certain degree are expected to recognize that as him as a proclivity, or something that he has the potential to tap back into. What I will say about racism, which is also an environmental threat and a social threat, is that people don't tend, in my experience, which is not inherent of the experience of all the world, but just in my lived experience, people, especially more so today in the new millennium, are not growing out of things that are convenient for them. And unfortunately, being white and being racist and being able to jump back into that, depending on where you're at, which was my original point about Martin Luther King saying that if you were truly about the cause, you would be doing work, not blending in with it or not saying anything about it when your racist family members are being racist. You know what I mean? Because I'm telling you, the ideology is always when these people hear their, and it don't matter even if they're white, because they can be any other ethnicity, but when they hear their family member be racist, it's always, oh, I'm not going to check that because they don't really mean that. That's not the person that they are, you know? But really, you're not doing that on my behalf, and you're not even doing that on that person's behalf. They're doing that because they don't want to be uncomfortable about the conversation. They don't want to talk about it. And that's what Martin Luther King was saying, that really you acting like you being here and supporting us is cool, but support is in the activism. It's in the work. It's in the day-to-day. It's in the interaction. If you're not checking racism where it's at, then you're not checking it, because just standing here beside us in the march is not helping us get to where we need to be. We need people's social opinions and attitudes to change. So, and that's why I say fatigued. So I don't see it like veganism. I do see it akin to rape. I see it as a social behavior that has terroristic elements that almost always, even if it's a relapse, going to land in somebody being hurt, whether that's in a microaggression at your job, whether that's in you offending the only Black friend that you have because you thought some shit was cool, but you just are, too tone deaf to realize it's not because you haven't been doing the work. You feel what I'm saying? Or whether you are, by silence, giving your consensus to your friends and family members that are running around here being racist.
Mm-hmm. I respect that. I respect that. Keisha Mitchell. We be going in, huh?
We do, definitely.
Especially your ass. Be in there. Deep. Nah, I'm playing. Man, yo, I got this. You're not gonna agree with some of it, but I would still love for you to watch it and write me your opinion on it. This video coming out tomorrow. Those of you watching, the video has come out weeks and weeks and weeks ago. It's called "Fuck Cancel Culture," and that drops tomorrow. I want you to check it out and give me your opinion on it. And yeah, man, are there any final thoughts, and how can people connect with you if you so desire to be connected with?
Yeah. Final thoughts, I don't know. I'm learning to be more confident about the way that I feel and like stop excusing it. I really don't care if somebody feels like my views are radical or if they're unfair or if they're short-sighted, because I know that, of course they're short-sighted and that I don't have a 360 perspective on the world. But which I'm sure that's why you got me on here. And the people that close to me know that I'm only really talking about what I know, and that I feel like for me, the reason why we can grow and why we can change, to your point, especially thoughts, even if not behaviors, but thoughts, is that we understand that, again, we don't know what we don't know, and we allow ourselves the space to grow. You know what I mean? And we allow ourselves the space to be better than what we were before, and I think that that's kind of like where everything is at, because I would be interested in 10 years from now, God willing, like seeing what this conversation looks like or where it's like, especially like, after I've expatriated and I live in another country, like, I'm willing to just see like how my awareness, because so much of where I do feel like these conversations fall short is that we do struggle because we do live in such a fucked up environment, and like even going to Canada, like just spending time up there, they're just across the border, and it's like a complete, like, when we talk about the things that we suffer down here, and it's like a world of different, like, it's like we're the third world country. Like, they really are just confused that people are living like we are and that we're okay with it, and revolution isn't for everybody. Radical change isn't for everybody. But as cliche as it is, I would just say, like, truly, like, be honest with yourself. Try to love yourself so that you can love others. And just really seek alignment for you, whatever that might look like, whatever idea, like whatever that is. But be true to yourself so that you can get on with it. You know what I mean? Like if you hate all of one type, go over there with the people that hate those people so that you can live in that truth, like and enjoy that. Like you know what I mean? Stop for everybody. Stop forcing yourself in worlds that don't serve you, in environments that are not of you.
Thank you so very much for coming through the show. I am so grateful, man, and I would
I'm
love to have
grateful.
you back. I would also love to have you back with more than one guest.
Mm-hmm.
Get a little cipher going with the opinions and facts and opinions. Um, yeah, man. Peace and love and gratitude.
Always, my love. I'll talk to you very soon. Thank you.
Expressions of love.